agency, Greer, because for the first time in what feels like ever in league history, we had an exciting free agency period where a lot of shit happened. And if you want to get the full scope of team by team moves, I know ESPN and some of the big outlets do transaction by transaction as a free agency tracker. We tried to make it a little easier on NoCapSpaceWBB.com. We broke it up by team for you, so you know exactly what every team in the W is getting, who they lose, what picks they get, and of course, what the vibes are with those teams. So Greer, I'll throw this to you as our opening topic here. Best vibes, the free agency winner in the WNBA so far is who?
I'm going to go Phoenix Mercury. They added a perennial MVP candidate in Alyssa Thomas, who, is leaving Connecticut after what I think is 11 years.
Mm-hmm.
11 years,
yeah. Franchise that drafted her.
Yeah, no, that's the only team she's ever played for. They may not have drafted her. She may have got it, like it may have been a trade or something.
Well, yeah, it was a draft day. It was a draft day trade by the Liberty. But she has played for the Sun. You are correct, for 11 years, 2014 to 2024.
And who, for my money, is every bit as good as she always has been. Like she's not a player that I feel like has dropped off post 10, year 10 or anything like that. Able to convince her to move out to the desert and join forces with Kalia Copper on the heels of losing Brittany Griner to the Atlanta Dream. Also, an 11-year player for the Mercury. And they also added the unicorn in Satu Sabally out of Dallas through a deal as a restricted free agent, right? Satu made it known that she did not want to resign in Dallas. And so the Phoenix Mercury retool on the fly. And you have to think that they're going to play like a different style than they did a season ago. But wow, no rest for the weary. Matt Ishbia and company got right back to it and got up on their horses and mounted up and made some really incredible moves. How is it going to look on the court? TBD, right? Like we saw the style that they played last year. This personnel, you have to know that they're playing differently. Is Nate Tibbetts and staff up to the challenge? I think so. But yeah, I'm going to give Phoenix Mercury my first award for winning free agency.
I think that, and your point is well taken on patience being somewhat required here, because I think we've seen, whether it be the Liberty, whether it be the Storm, I don't know if you can microwave in year one, but as we saw with New York, year two, and maybe we'll see with the Storm this year in year two, that's when things start to come together. Alyssa Thomas, to me, it's such a major move just because her game, while it has its playoff limitations, it also ages pretty well. It's not necessarily a game predicated on speed, on quick first steps, the type of things that can diminish with age. Like, I don't want old man game to be used as a pejorative here with her. I feel like she has that type of YMCA pickup game where a 60-year-old is busting your ass and you're like, what is going on right now? I'm in my prime, right? Like, she can still do that and probably can do that for a few more years. And then, as you mentioned, they add Satu to the mix. They have Kalia Copper already, who is easily, in my opinion, one of the top 5 scorers in the league. And so you are asking AT to shoulder such a significantly less scoring role, or significantly smaller scoring role, that you end up with a team that can at least on paper contend, early on. And what I love about Matt Ishbia here is he came in and he invested. I think my biggest
immediate return on said investment.
Yep. Well, and you know what my biggest fear was with him was that he clearly loves basketball. Yep. That much we know. Walk-on guy at Michigan State, dude loves hoop. My biggest concern was is he going to fall into the trope though of your run-of-the-mill men's basketball guy who's going to have two different shiny toys, the Sun and the Mercury. And because he's a men's basketball player with that background, is he going to just go all in on the Suns and look at the Mercury as more of an investment property, so to speak, than like a team in the same way we look at the men's game? And to see him handle both with the same level of intensity is awesome. He does not look at the Mercury as an add-on to the Suns. He looks at the Mercury as their own individual product. And you can make the argument he's looking at the landscape and seeing you could probably get a championship with the Mercury easier than you can with the Suns, given what the cap constrictions are.
The Suns are cooked. Right? The Suns are cooked. So yeah, kind of, it feels like, I don't know that he's taking, I would assume, I mean, you have to take lessons from the KD Beal experiment and be applying them here, right? And it's not just the three biggest names that you can get. It's, do they truly complement each other? And I think that the three-headed monster that the Phoenix Mercury have now absolutely do.
Yeah, I agree. So they're one good winner. I think the other winner here is the Indiana Fever. And I know that's like,
no, I agree. Where's their weakness right now?
They don't really have one.
Experience, maybe. But
and like this is the tricky thing with the Fever is like anytime you mention Indiana, you're like, am I engagement baiting right now? Because that's where the audience is. But no, man. Amber Cox and Kelly Krauskopf killed it.
Yeah. This
free agency period. And I understood the questions when Satu goes to Phoenix. You make this trade to get Melissa Smith's contract off the books, and you're thinking to yourself, who on earth is going to be in that 3-4 spot now? Like, you have clear depth with a Sophie Cunningham and Alexi Hull, but who is going to provide you defensive ability / scoring and or at that wing spot? And then you go out and get fucking DeWanna Bonner. I mean, that component is so important in so many ways, because I think DeWanna, in a lot of respects, has a game that age might catch up to. It hasn't so far, but like age might catch up to that game a little bit quicker than Alyssa's might, for instance. However, you're not going to be asking DeWanna to do all that much more than what she did in Connecticut. In fact, I'd argue you're asking her to do significantly less. You're asking her to defend, but you're also asking her to be a versatile scorer when you go up against teams that are going to throw the house at Caitlin Clark and Kelsey Mitchell. And on top of that, DB's length helps you inside too. Because I think like you had Temi as the rim runner that kind of almost looked Hannah Stolke-ish at moments this year. But I think Temi had her limitations as like a back-to-basket player from 15 feet and in. DeWanna Bonner might not be like in the circle back-to-basket, but you have Aaliyah Boston for that first and foremost. You need a player that can kind of operate in that mid-range and defend in that mid-range. And to that end, DB does that for you. You also get Sophie Cunningham, who, as we mentioned, for whatever you want to say about her off the floor and for whatever, whether or not they beat the allegations on certain things, like, fine, we can have that conversation at a different point, I hear she might be taking a job with Doge, and so, we don't know if she's going to be there in the WNBA this year. But one of the things that I think Sophie on the floor provides, especially good defense in the backcourt, and can be a spark plug scorer off the bench. Lexi Hull is really a true 3-and-D player. I think Sophie adds that dimension as well. I'm curious who they're going to have at that backup point guard spot, and if that's a position they attack in the draft. I think this is a deeper guard draft than folks give it credit for. And so I do think you can pull someone in the second round that can kind of be like a Jalen Sherrod-ish type of player for you. But I do think you can't play Caitlin 40 minutes. And so you're going to need someone behind her there. But as far as adding the one position that they needed to add that would fill out your roster and make it even, I think that they did that in spades. offense. And I said it on the Sunday show with Tyler. I don't know if that makes you a title favorite, but it certainly makes your ceiling that of a finals team, because you're going to see bigs on the Liberty, right? Like you're going to see Leone Fiebich, Stewie, Jonquel Jones. You're going to have, I think Aaliyah Boston's going to come into this season in significantly different shape with a different what is needed, because I think it's important to know in a lot of respects, B was as a rookie somebody that played a very traditional slow down back to basket role. And it took him a while to kind of learn and understand how to play with Caitlin and how to play that transition, that pick and roll game. And I bet she comes in significantly different shape and significantly different understanding of what the offense is. You have a better coach in Steph White. And so I'm taking the backcourt of Indiana over New York right now. It just depended on what you're going to get in terms of the front court and the wings. And New York, I think, still has the depth. But if you were to measure 5 to 5, it could compete. At least in my opinion, it can. So I'm very high on what the Fever are doing, and that's not like SEO blow smoke, bullshit. It's, it feels like you raised your floor and ceiling at the same time. And when you do that, you win a free agency period. And then we go into the draft. Who's your loser? Or is there anybody in particular that you are worried about?
Well, I do want to just go back to Dawana really quickly, because Dawana's been one of my favorite players in the league basically since she got drafted by Phoenix out of Auburn. And you're not necessarily counting on her to score with the Fever, although I think she will. But just the intangible she is going to add to their team is like incredible. So an incredible get if you're the Fever front office. And in terms of loser, I think after a disappointing season last year where they do not three-peat, don't even make it to the WNBA finals, I think you got to look at the Las Vegas Aces as a loser in free agency. It had been speculated for years that a lot of top players wanted to play for the Las Vegas Aces, but just couldn't get out of their particular contract situations and stuff like that. And yes, they add Jewel Lloyd via 3-team trade with the Sparks and the Seattle Storm. But honestly, coming off the year that she just had, both in Olympic play and for the Seattle Storm, I personally am not that moved. I get Kelsey Plum wanting a fresh start, but this is a team that, at least for right now, seems like they're going to be relying on rookie Elizabeth Kitley a whole hell of a lot next to Asia Wilson. They don't really upgrade those spots of Megan Gustafson and Kia Stokes. Alicia Clark is getting older. Asia is a 28 years. 28. Ooh, I'm good. 28 years old. You know what I mean? Still very much in her prime, but this is the time where you want to be making it easier on her, as a star. And I don't think that the Las Vegas front office. Also, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Is like they don't currently have a GM either.
Yeah.
And so not filling that position that was vacated by Natalie Williams at the end of last year, losing 2 assistant coaches on the bench. What is going to be this Aces identity in this 2025 season? And I have no clue coming out of free agency.
Yeah.
So they're the losers right now.
I do wonder if there is a wait and see going on with various investigations, for instance, general perception around the league. Who they fill that GM role, or who they fill that GM role with. Assistants have been hired in the place of Tyler Marsh and Natalie Nakase. And generally, I think that Becky Hammon, has done a good job because for all intents and purposes, like she's kind of the de facto champ right now. But I do wonder if you are waiting a year to see what the landscape is before we turn over the CBA and go to the caps, a presumed cap spike. And
you guys don't have to do things under the table anymore.
I know, right? No more tourism authority.
For sure.
Yeah, I'd rather the payments be above board, but at the same time, with A'ja Wilson being 28 years old, every year counts in the window here. And I zag a little on yours, Dig, just because I do think that I'm not sold on the idea that Chelsea Gray is washed just yet. I know that the age is coming into play, and I know that she wasn't fully healthy this year. And that to me is like the great variable. Like if we get a fully healthy Chelsea Gray, and we see it with Sloot every now and then, but generally passing is a trait that doesn't go away. Yeah. The cerebral nature of being an elite point guard will always age gracefully. And she never struck me as a person that relied on athleticism overtly to be a player that won stuff. Now, I will say, I do have a concern about the three-point shooting because that has been a hallmark of her game. And at her best, going back to that Seattle Storm playoff series, I think it was 2021, where it was like, oh my God, one of arguably the greatest WNBA performances we've ever seen from a player. I wonder if you're able to get that kind of thing back from her in terms of that shooting clip, but at least as a facilitator, that maintains. My big question here is how Jewell Loyd fits. I know that, and I am going to die on the hill that I think she has too much respect for A'ja Wilson to walk into that team and be like, I'm 1A. However, if Jackie Young has another struggle to open the year, do we end up with this type of situation where Jewell is like, I should be starting or playing, and how those minutes are doled out? Do you decide to go Chelsea, Jackie, Jewell as your 1, 2, 3 and kind of play smaller with, a presumed Cheyenne Parker-Tyus? She still hasn't signed for the Aces as of this recording, but it's believed she's going to go there, or a Kia Stokes or a Megan Gustafson in the Asian 5. How the rotations work, I'm really curious about. But you're right. It does make you wonder what the top end is. I don't think they're the true loser just because I feel like the Mystics have coasted.
Okay.
Like they're not interesting. And like, this is going to sound rude to the Mystics, but like, they're not interesting enough that I can be like, you are the loser of free agency. But I think because I'm not talking about you, you're a loser by default in this, right? And the expectation, I think, with the Mystics is that they're going for a long rebuild. Like, they're not trying to alter any moves now. They are, they've said on the record, we're going to follow the Wizards example, which, but like, but
tax breaks only.
Exactly. Godspeed. But I think I'm a little disappointed that they didn't even seem to do anything around the fringes, right? Like this is a team.
I don't even know that they were meeting with anybody. Like, you know what I mean?
No,
like, I didn't even hear any rumors that, this person, it's coming down to the like Connecticut got gutted.
Yeah.
But they still had people signed there in the offseason.
Yeah, like they at least took meetings. They made trades. They were active. And all right. I said this on Reddit today. I'm going to zag on this whole bullshit of like, they need to move the Sun to Boston. Okay. I'm going to lay this out real quick. First and foremost, I think it's very interesting that a league that claims its fan base, at least, claims to be such advocates for supposedly progressive values that you are so quick to jettison one of the few Native American sports ownership groups, one of only two, mind you. The tribe, the name is escaping me, They are owners of San Diego's future MLS team, along with their Egyptian billionaire benefactor. But the Mohegan Nation is one of the few tribes that they are the only tribe that has majority ownership over a franchise. Not just that, Uncasville gets a shit rap. And I don't say this in the sense of like, look, Uncasville is not New York. It's not Paris. But look, if you were to say to someone, and I think this is going to matter when the cap spike happens, because for a very particular type of person, that area of Connecticut can kind of be nice. Like that area of Connecticut. If you drive south
about former UConn players, is that what those kind of
could be that? Could be that if you're trying to get that Stewie retirement package. Yeah. But I'm saying, like, if you drive south from like New London, Norwich, and Uncasville down to the coast, in the Northeast, we call that the Gold Coast. Like Old Saybrook and all of these coastal communities in Connecticut, they're beautiful. They're like the epitome of like Northeastern old money sailboat on the coast, right? And when the spike happens, and you'll be able to presumably pay a superstar $400,000 or $500,000 a year, if you are the type of person that is an older vet or someone that doesn't like the spotlight, you can live in a real nice Connecticut suburb right on the water in a real nice house with real good schools for your kids and an arena that generally has consistently good season ticket purchases, and you get to kind of live your life as a normal human being in that way. And I know that there are some people that want the superstar life of New York and LA, and that's totally good. But I also know that there are some superstars that want the quiet life. And I think Connecticut can offer that to you. Not to mention, I think the WNBA does a disservice to the Sun as Connecticut's franchise. That it's the only franchise in that state that authentically claims Connecticut. And frankly, in terms of livability, that's a hell of a lot better than Hartford or New Haven. I'm just going to say that straight up. If you've been in the Northeast, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And to that end, the Sun have cared. You know, people look at
they've made 6 straight conference finals, right? Like, or something like that. Right? So, like,
historically competitive franchise here. Like, this is not the Oakland Athletics under John Fisher in the last 10 years. Like, for everything you want to levy against the tribe for not having the facilities, which is reasonable, they need the facilities. And you know, for the people that say, oh, they might not have the money of these more like techie billionaire owners like a Joe Lacob, I would advise you to Google how much the tribe brought in revenue in the last year. They got buku, folks. So if they build that facility and invest in the team properly, Uncasville, Norwich, New London can be a completely fine place for a franchise, and the entire state of Connecticut can come around to it in a way that they haven't since the Hartford Whalers, to be completely honest. The reason I say that the Mystics are a loser, bring that long tangent all the way back, apathy is the problem to me. I will always take issue with people that don't try. You know, if you try and fail, that's one thing, unless you're the Mavericks who tried and were stupid. That's a different situation. But like, if you don't try at all, you are a perennial loser of a franchise in my book, because you owe it to your team and to your fans to do better. My issue with Atlanta for a long time is that they didn't take the swings that befitted a cultural center of women's basketball in the WNBA in the Southeast. And this year, clearly they watched our show from the Indiana Fever Sun, you know, where I just took a blowtorch to Larry Gottesdiener and Renee Montgomery, because they went out, they took a big swing with Carl Smesko, they took a big swing with Brittany Griner, they opened up the checkbook for Breonna Jones, and they signaled to the WNBA fans and franchises elsewhere that they give a shit now that the money is here. And Connecticut, whether you like it or not, they are indicating that they care. Because even if it's a studs up rebuild, you are still seeing action and movement. The Mystics have done nothing. Their head coach hire was completely uninspired. And they still play in the same venue as Capital City Go-Go. And Their practice facilities are still split. They don't have a dedicated facility yet, as Ted Leonsis and Monumental try to do this Northern Virginia entertainment complex. And there's not even a promise that if they get that for the Wizards, they're going to get it for the Mystics too. Like that they're going to split the venue and split the facilities or get the Mystics their own. And so the apathy is why I think you are a loser here, because you need to care. We have seen this time and time again with women's basketball dating back to Title IX. The people that care are the people that win. Like dating back to Tennessee, Louisiana Tech, USC, into the 90s, with UConn, with South Carolina. When you invest and you give a shit, people win and the money prints. And the Mystics do not have an excuse to not care, especially when you know the bag is on the way. So, loser. You need to do better. For those
I also not as bad as not as bad as the Mystics, obviously, but Valkyries are also a big loser.
I would agree.
Big loser. Like, for all of Joe Lacob's, come on. Like, again, another team where maybe they got a couple meetings with some big, but like it didn't really feel like anything real, anything like, oh, this has legs to it kind of thing. And so, I know that they wanted to make a big splash in their debut season. And the expansion draft, the results of that, free agency, nothing. I mean, nothing. So just because of who their ownership is, I have to say it's an L. You know what I'm saying?
Totally. As a person living in California and as a former person that lived in California and Sacramento, I'm curious your thoughts on this, because I said this on Blue Sky and I think it's legit, at least for now. In LA and New York, even in a place like Seattle, 200 to 250,000, which is roughly the max of what you can offer somebody in this league. There are certain neighborhoods or areas within a reasonable proximity that dollar can stretch. The Bay is, for my money, having lived in Sac, it's one of the only places in the country where it can't. Yeah. Like if you make 250 in New York, you can live on Long Island and have a nice place. It's not New York City. It's not Westchester County or Stamford or Greenwich, but you can live in a nice place in Long Island for that amount of money. Is there an area of LA, as the LA native, that like, if you make that kind of money, like you might not be living in a nice place in Santa Monica, but like you can live.
You can live in the Valley. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Who goes to the Bay quite a lot. The thing is, you could pay a grip and still have drug addicts outside your door going.
And not just that, like to be in even an average place within a reasonable proximity to San Francisco, because the geography of the Bay
and Oakland, right? And the practice facility,
it's Oakland, but even Oakland, like Oakland and Vallejo and Martinez, like that shit isn't cheap. You're not going to afford Sausalito on $250K. They won't even let you within the city limits of Palo Alto on $250K. San Jose on $250K is a maybe. But like downtown San Francisco, to get a nice place that isn't a shoebox, like 250, like the real estate is out of control in a lot of respects. And so to me, I wonder if you had a hard time selling people on that figure now. But when the cap spike happens and that dollar figure goes from a 250 max to super max to maybe 350, 450, 500, and you can live in downtown or you can live in one of the outlying Silicon Valley type communities where a Steph Curry might live, for instance, or,
Steph doesn't want no neighbors. We've been
Steph's a NIMBY.
No neighbors.
He's no Brandon Podzimski, who I'm sure lives like in the Mission somewhere.
Multi-family housing.
Yes. Oh gosh. I couldn't believe when I saw that. Anywho, the point I'm making is that with Golden State, I think I'm interested if it becomes more appealing when the finances get a little bit better and it becomes more feasible to do such a thing, especially for families, right? Because, we know that some of the housing subsidies are provided by WNBA franchises as per the last CBA. But, if you're like, and I know people are going to laugh at this concept, but if you are from NorCal, like a 4-person household and you're the sole income earner on 200,000, that's not as much as you think. And it's not nearly, exactly. And it's not going nearly as far as it does in a place like Dallas or Indiana, for instance. And I do think it's noteworthy. The markets that got a lot of free agents this year, at least for the 1-year rental, very favorable real estate markets. Indiana or Indianapolis, Phoenix, which is a growing and cheaper by comparison market, Atlanta, which again, cheaper by comparison market, and Dallas, who got a haul on a bunch of these different free agents as well, or people via trade to kind of build a team around Paige. Cover your ears. But I think it's clear that there were obvious winners here. I think there's like some mid-tiers, some semi-winners, like the Chicago Sky to Mira winner because they didn't do anything stupid. Like the vision is still the vision, and the pieces that they put without giving up that pick, like that's still a win. Like you're going to get your point guard of the future. You got Sloot as a veteran. You brought on Rebecca Allen. You still have Angel. You still have Camila Cardoso. Like that's a slow and steady wins the race, type of win. It might not be the flashy win, but it's a win nonetheless.